Lesson 2.2, the distributive property. So this lesson starts off with an example, camping. You and a friend are going on a camping trip. You each buy a backpack that costs $90 and a sleeping bag that costs $60. So let's write this here. Backpack is $90 and a sleeping bag, which is $60. Two friends. So you have two friends, each have a backpack of $90 and a sleeping bag of $60. What is the total cost of the camping equipment? This brings us to example 1, which uses this scenario as the basis of it. Example 1 is all of this. So you can use two methods to find the total cost of the camping trip. Method 1 is to find the cost of one backpack and one sleeping bag. So one backpack and one sleeping bag. So $90 plus $60. That's the cost of one backpack and one sleeping bag. And then multiply the result by 2. So this times 2, because of the two friends. This is the cost of one friend, and you multiply that by 2. So this would be 150 times 2, 300. Or, this is method 1. Or you could do method 2, which is to find the cost of two backpacks and the cost of two sleeping bags. Since there's two friends, but there's two backpacks and two sleeping bags. So 90 for one backpack times 2, because there's two of them, plus 60 for the sleeping bag times 2. This would equal 180 plus 120 equals 300. Both of them get the same result, but through different ways. These are equivalent numerical expressions. So this is all example 1. This brings us to equivalent numerical expressions. This is because this and this are equivalent numerical expressions because they have the same value. The statement that 2 times 90 plus 60 equals 2 times 90 plus 2 times 60 illustrates the distributive property. These are equivalent numerical expressions, and this illustrates the distributive property, which is what this lesson is about. So let's bring this over here. Distributive property. Distributive property. This is basically that if you have A times B plus C, it's the same thing as AB plus AC, which if you do it with numbers, it would be, let's say you had 4 times 6 plus 3. It's the same thing as 4 times 6 plus 4 times 3. I like to think of it as like, if you have A times B plus C, you do A times B and plus A times C. A times B plus A times C. That's how I like to think of it. 4 times 6 plus 4 times 3. That's the distributive property, and you could do it with subtraction also. So let's say you had A, B minus C. It's the same thing as A times B plus A times negative C. So plus A times negative C is negative AC, which would then be AB minus AC, because this is a negative integer. This brings us to example 2. After touring a cave, you visit the gift shop and buy 3 geodes. Each geode costs $5.95, and use the distributive property and mental math to find the total cost of the geode. So let's say the total cost of the 3 geodes, example, you have 3 geodes, each one is $5.95. You could do this in using the distributive property by doing 3 times 6 minus 0.05. This is an alternate version of 5.95. So you could do 3 times 6, which is 18, minus 3 times 0.05, which would be minus 0.15, 0.15. Which would then get you 17.85. This is the total cost, the geodes, using the distributive property, because you had this, and then you did 3 times 6, which is 18, minus 3 times 0.05, which would be 0.15. That's all example 2. And just like equivalent numerical expressions are like this, you also have equivalent variable expressions, which is basically the same thing, but with variables. Equivalent variable expressions. This is basically saying that something like 3 times x plus 7, same thing as 3x plus 3 times 7. It's the same thing as this, except with a variable included in it. Which brings us to example 3, which is saying, use the distributive property to write an equivalent variable expression. So in number A, they give us, like this example I gave, they give us 3 times x plus 7. So what we do is we would multiply 3 with x, we would multiply 3 with 7. So the equivalent variable expression for this would be 3 times x, 3x, plus 3 times 7, 21. So it would be the equivalent variable expression. B, they give us n plus 4 times negative 2. So in this case, they trick us by putting the negative 2 after this, but in reality, it's the same thing. You'd multiply negative 2 by 4 and by n. So you would get negative 2 times n, which would be negative 2 times n, plus negative 2 times 4, plus negative 2 times 4, which would be negative 8, which would be negative 2n minus 8. And C, they give us negative 5 times 2y minus 3. We would do the same thing again. We multiply negative 5 by 2y, negative 5 by negative 3 times negative 3. So we have negative 5 times 2y, which is negative 10y. And then plus negative 5 times negative 3. Remember, when we multiply two things with the same sign, it's always positive. So negative 5 times negative 3 is 15, positive 15. So you get negative 10y plus 15. This all makes part of example number 3.